I Good evening, my friends. It is I, Madam Onça, and you are here for Tarot Talk for the Tower Times. Welcome, welcome. Hmm. Oh, I should set it up so I can see you in the comments. If you're here, drop a hello. Let me know. This is time for me to take off my glasses. This is the weekly show where I take some time to talk to you about tarot. If you are just meeting me for the first time, I am the artist and co author of the World Spirit Tarot. Hello! Which is a tarot deck, book, kit, etc. It's a whole business that is currently in its second edition. And we just have the second printing of the second edition, which is totally an upgrade. So tarot is something I know something about and something I love to talk about and share with folks. So I have been doing a ongoing, albeit slightly sporadic, show through the pandemic, sharing information with folks about that as COVID has allowed. Hi, welcome aboard. So I suspect that I may make. So where do I want to start? Why Tower Times? Because I do believe that the Tower card, which we talked about a bit last week, is a fantastic metaphor for the times in which we live, which is a time of radical acquaintance with truth. It is an opportunity to have a radical readjustment of your perspective. Isn't that so appropriate for what we're going through right now? The use of the term Tower Times was popularized by the esteemed Appalachian folklorist and author and elder witch Byron Ballard. I highly recommend all of her writing. She is bona fide in having spent decades in service to people and also as an international folklorist and author. So, Tower Times, here we are. What we've been doing in the last little while is working our way through the tarot deck, through the minor arcana and all the way up to the major arcana. Today, we will do the last major arcana in the deck. I intend to also walk through the people cards in the weeks to come and sort of bring us through the whole series. There are 22 major cards, and we have gone through a bunch of them. We're going to do the last third of them today. So if you have a deck, any deck that is tarot aligned, be it my deck or another one, I encourage you to get those major cards out now. Last week, we ended with the Tower card, which was number 16 by most counts. So we're going to go from there, moving on through to the very end. I want to mention that I think that we may do a little bit shorter today. Like I won't stay on. Last week I was on for an hour and a half because I love you all so much and it was so fun. However, it is 95 degrees here and I'm concerned about my birds. So I think I'll probably teach today and do a little bit of card reading, but rather than linger and chat for an hour and a half, I probably will end up running outside and making sure that they are okay. Even the chickens. I know that we're hearing from around the nation that the power lines the power cables for the streetcars are melting in Portland from the heat, that the sidewalks are melting and buckling in places because of the heat. Here in Awesome Town, we are all doing okay, but even the chickens are walking around in the shade, panting, going, "Can you even?" So I think I'm probably going to set a box fan up for my birds to give them the option to at least get some moving air tonight. And that sums up a lot of what you need to know about me. I like witchy things. I like booky things. I like tarot things. I like chicken things. And I like working with the people. So thanks for being here. If you've got your cards, let's take a moment to check back in with that Tower card. We talked about this card last week. It is the card frequently of a radical change of perspective. It is also known historically as the lightning struck tower. And often you'll see the figure, the crowned figure, standing on top, and the lightning bringing them down as the tower falls. So, as I said, a lovely metaphor for this time when COVID has provided everyone with an opportunity to really look at some of the systems flaws that we have always had, from infrastructure with failing bridges and a healthcare system that literally cannot get vaccines to all the people who want them because we don't have the societal infrastructure to care for the weak and the vulnerable, and the disenfranchised, and also, things like systemic sexism, racism, classism, and so forth. The Tower gives us an opportunity to look at all of those things. Now, were I a person of a different, perhaps political and ideological leaning, I'm sure the Tower card would still mean those things. I would just consider it pointing the finger in the other direction. So isn't that how how it always goes? The Tower card. In most accountings, that is number 16. We're going to jump from there to 17. This card actually will be redrawn in my next edition of my deck. So if you have it now, enjoy it. It will be different next time around. Every time I reissue the deck, I like to update a few cards. If you're just joining us now, my name is Madam Onça, and I am the artist and co-author of the World Spirit Tarot. We are walking through the final cards in the Major Arcana. If you're just joining us, please drop your hellos here in the chats. And if you have questions, comments, I will do my best to answer them while doing the job I have chosen. So we were just talking about the Tower card, and now we are moving from 16, the Tower, to the Star. This is a bona fide actual class about tarot. I know on Twitch, most of our activities are more gaming, art, chicks and hot tubs. But in this case, I like to use Twitch is for witches and actually share some of the information I have learned about the history and the study of the tarot. So if you have a deck, you may want to get it out. So we're coming to the Star, as I was saying, in the next edition of my deck, which is the World Spirit Tarot. In the third edition, this card will be updated to be even more multicultural. Here is the Star. In images of the Star, traditionally we see often a woman, often sky-clad or naked. Often we see water pouring from one or two jugs. And of course, we see many stars and frequently also birds. And the birds are there in a sense as to represent the sort of psychopomp. They represent that aspect of our spiritual selves, you might say, that is able to move between worlds of the meat, this world in which we live, and also the sort of more ephemeral world, if you want to think about it that way. In practical terms, because that's what tarot is really about, the practicality. Can you use it in order to help you understand things about yourself or the folks for whom you are reading? When the Star card comes up, it is broadly a card that speaks to healing. If you're a person who has been going through emotional crises, when the Star comes up, it suggests improvement. It suggests moving towards closure. This is also a card that often speaks to bursts of insight, like really getting deep in it, and the sort of personal revelation that can make your life not only feel as if you're on the path to personal healing, but also to reacquaintance and wholeness with oneself or resolution of a situation. Basically, the Star always comes up with some good news for you. Because the tarot can be a little tongue-in-cheek, sometimes it also can literally be like, oh, look at you, you're a star. You are having your moment. Everyone can see you. Everyone can hear you. You are seen and you are validated. So often the tarot has that sort of almost comic, superficial meaning. And when I say superficial, I don't mean devoid of content, but rather kind of a quick take. So it's like, you're a star because healing, inspiration, insight, and personal movement. So there's the Star card. We have gone from the Tower. We are now moving through the celestial cards. So there was the Star. Now comes the Moon. I like to talk about the Moon card a little bit because it has come to me over COVID, as I've been doing my sort of tarot-related studies, For me, the tarot card of the moon has primarily positive associations because I grew up in a, witchy, sort of immersive, woman positive intuition. All of my art, all of my personal impetus has always been towards trying to integrate, the brainy, intellectual aspects of being a human with our gut instinct, right? So for me, the moon card has always had positive associations. And here it is, often images of the moon card in the tarot. We see the moon, we see the sort of divine sparks falling from the heavens. There's usually towers. They are often human constructed towers. I prefer I wanted to make them sort of naturally occurring features of the geography. And often, if you look up close, you will see something like a wolf, perhaps a dog, and something like a fish, turtle, crayfish, something rising up out of the waters. There's definitely a feeling in this card of moving through a gateway, or perhaps several kinds of gateway. Like the towers feel almost like gate posts. The river itself is almost like a road. The theme of guardians is sort of reiterated by the wolf and the dog. So as I was saying, my associations with this card are primarily positive because I think of intuition, instinct, paying attention to your dreams, your subconscious. As an artist, I'm very interested in what's going on in the deeps, shall we say. However, in addition to that layer of meaning, the moon card has some traditional layers of meaning that have accreted to it over time. This card often speaks to, is it a river basically a wet road? Yes, it is, just some guy from Tennessee. Absolutely. Although you would need a very tiny boat in order to pass up this particular one. You're always funny. The additional layer of meaning for the moon card is that it can also speak of unseen forces at work. Now, that sounds very, I don't necessarily mean that in like a metaphysical sense. It literally can mean, if it comes up, let's say you are, trying to navigate a relationship difficulty, or you are bucking for a promotion in a workplace situation. When the moon card comes up, it suggests that there are things happening in the situation that you don't see, that you don't have the information about. Maybe it's another qualified person has entered the pool, be it in relationship or be it in your workplace. Like, it describes forces at work that you can't see. Metaphorically, of course, that is because if you have ever tried walking in the moonlight without the aid of any artificial light, while a full moon can give you a great sense of what's happening in your environment, can throw things into very high, bright, lovely detail, it also creates very deep pockets of shadow in a way that the sun does not. So a moonlit landscape, if you would like to navigate it safely, you would do well to not only use your intellect, use your instinct, try to bring those things together, because there are things here that you may not be able to suss out at the first go. Another way to imagine you're walking across, a landscape in moonlight. You think you're stepping in a puddle, and a puddle that may be, an inch deep. It may be a pit full of peanut butter. You literally don't know, because the moonlight can only offer you so much information. So yes, the moon, full of the suggestion that it's a very important time for you to look for and expect the unexpected. So the moon card, like I said, for me, I usually think of it as positive. Some folks tend to be a little more afraid of it if they aren't really dialed into that vibe, if you want to put it that way. Also, the question of, like, what do these creatures mean? For at least 100 years, they've been appearing in tarot cards, right? If not hundreds of years. The dog, the wolf, I think of those as representations of aspects of our human consciousness, meaning like literally our self-awareness and the toolkit that we have for problem solving the world that we're in. The wolf represents our sort of most feral, intuitive, uninformed in some ways, but also unimpinged, like our self that knows this alley is not safe, our self that cannot be talked into wanting to sit in a cubicle if what it really wants to do is run, like sort of a pure, essential mammalian aspect of ourselves. And then the dog is the what happens to a wolf once it has come into contact with thousands of years of breeding in society, right? It is basically the domesticated version of ourselves. So one is sort of maybe our inner beast, and the other one is our socialized beast. And that creature, there's usually, again, like a crawfish or a lobster, something usually rising up, and that is always bringing messages from your subconscious. Again, like if you've been dreaming a lot, pay attention to what's going on in your dreams. In my case, I can say that outwardly everything is fine here. I mean, it's hot, it's busy, but everything is fine. But I have been having a lot of really tumultuous dreams. And although I do not yet have information about why, I'm definitely keeping an eye on it. Like what is going on in that deep part of my brain that needs to express itself through hours and hours of cinematic, explosive, complicated, tragic, fascinating. It's like I've been running a Lord of the Rings thing in the back of my mind in my sleep for days. Why? Got to be a reason why my brain thinks that that's an appropriate response to the stimulus I'm getting. That little voice, that is that little crawfish coming up. So there's the moon card, number 18. And we find ourselves so close to the end of the deck from here. Again, for anybody who's just joining us, with the tarot cards, there are 5 different suits, 5 different sort of sets of cards. They are, in fact, where modern playing cards come from. They have a parent form, if you go back far enough, called tarocchi in Italy. And we have the wands, which are like clubs. We have the swords, which are like spades. We have the diamonds, which are like pentacles or discs. The other way around. We have cups, which are like hearts. So those are, the ones you may be familiar with already. And then we have the Major Arcana. That's what we're working with today. And we have walked from 0, which is the Fool, through many, many cards describing the shape of the human experience. And we are now in the home stretch. So having gone from the star and the moon, we now come to the sun. Da-da-da. This card is one of the ultimate cards of benediction in the deck. Basically, when the sun comes up, everything is awesome. Traditionally, this is something like a white horse, something like a sort of cherubic or childlike person. There's sunflowers. Everything about it is like the daytime feeling of fireworks. There's flags, pennants, banners. It's very celebratory. If you had the first edition of my deck, you may remember that the art in that card was not this. It was an experiment that did not turn out the way that I would have liked. So I'm happy to say in the second edition, we've got this version. Why haven't I been carving unicorns for years? I forgot how fun it was. I think I was in 4th grade the last time I made a unicorn. And that one was paper mache in Miss Perillo's class. I should have kept it up because it was super fun. When the sun card comes up, it basically says your plans want to work out. The vacation is going to be grand. The acceptance and visibility that you had hoped for is coming your way. Everything about this card is positive. If you have any questions about anything, feel free to drop it in the chat. We have 2 more cards today, and then perhaps we'll do a quick review of the majors if we have time. Now we come to number 20. I have strong feelings about the traditional artwork on this card. I should have actually pulled one of the traditional versions up. If you have a separate Google window, you may want to pop it up. The Rider-Waite-Smith or Rider-Waite version of this art. That artist was a genius, but I do not like the art. That is partly because it represents a paradigmatic shift, I suppose. What we see in the traditional version is sort of an angel blowing a horn, and we see the gray corpses, the naked corpses of men, women, and children rising out of stone sarcophagi. It's essentially a card of resurrection and renewal. It is a card that speaks to the closing of a phase, a chapter in your life. I like to say sometimes it's also a card that speaks to if something happened tomorrow and somebody had to make your eulogy, would you be happy with what the eulogy said? The eugoogly, as some might say. Here's my version because I wanted something that was a little less zombie apocalypse feeling. And here instead we see Anubis, or Anubis, who is many times and places in the history of Egypt, the god of the dead. Here he is weighing the soul of the person against the feather of truth. And we see at the bottom all of the various people sort of making their humans, animals, all making their journey through this world. Ultimately, everybody ends up here being weighed out by the jackal-headed god. So, again, this card speaks to what are they going to say about you if your chapter was over today? How you feel about that? And if you were coming to closure on a time period in your life right now, what have you learned? How do you feel about that? What homework do you have to do in order to put the past to rest? And what would you like to do moving forward? The Judgment card. And that brings us to the universe. The universe is technically, it is the final card in the deck. By most counts, it is the final of the Major Arcana. Again, going 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, on and on, 18, 19, 20, 21. We come to this final card. But also, by most accounts, the tarot starts with the aces and moves through all of those Major Arcana, through all 78 cards. So this card not only caps the 20-some cards of the Major Arcana as a whimsically illustrated graphic novel of the path of the individual on their hero's journey, but actually for the whole kit and caboodle of tarot from beginning to end. This card is sometimes called the world, sometimes called the eon. In my case, it is the universe. We see here the universe is expansive, so we have a big gal enjoying the expansiveness of the universe. She is dancing the dance between the stars and the planets with her amazing, amazing hair. In the corners, you see the symbols of the various elements. Tarot is very saturated, sort of omnipresent. The traditional symbols of the classic Western elements, earth, air, water, and fire. Of course, that system is not universal. From what I understand, in old Chinese esoteric systems, they have wood and metal rather than earth, if that's please correct me if I don't have that right, but that's what I think I remember from many rounds of having acupuncture. So when I say the elements, of course, I'm looking through the lens of tarot, which is unmistakably rooted in the Western esoteric tradition. So when we see the universe, the world, the eon, whatever this card might be called for you, we are once again seeing in the absolute closure of the chapter. It started with the Fool card. Oh, I shall see if I can find her. The Fool card, we see a person willing to step off into brave new adventure, trying something new, being willing to be the person who doesn't know everything. That Fool, when that card comes up, you're typically being validated, like the universe through the tarot is saying, yeah, this is a good time to take that risk. I'm going to see if I can find it for you. So it goes from the Fool through the whole journey. We come, by the time you get to the universe, that says you have learned the things, you have learned the lessons, you have mastered your new skill set, and you've come around. The part where I trail off in mid-sentence is me going, right, it's going to take a minute to find that card. Because, of course, when you're looking for a card, one of the rules of the tarot is the one you need is always the 78th one that you'll find. What did Zolani say? Yep, China has the 5 elements. Metal is the 5th. Oh, thank you. Is wood one? I seem to remember that instead of earth, it was wood and metal, but, again, correct me if I'm wrong. Let's see. I have a big clump of majors here from our adventures last week. And thanks for jumping aboard. It's nice to see you. We spend so much time together. Let's see. Come on, tarot cards. I suppose I could have thought about pulling this card out beforehand, but as I said, we have a lot going on here. I will do this instead. In here, this is the newly released version of the book for the deck, and I have to say it is so great and slick. And it also features a lovely black and white picture. Let's see if I can get that close enough. So there we see the Fool. still, almost a dancing figure. Like this person is clearly stepping off a precipice, surrounded by dogs and birds. All these sort of symbols of instinct and intuitive guidance, if you want to think of it that way. So there's the Fool. You've completed that journey, learned everything that we met as we went through. The Fool suggests it's time to take risks and be willing to be the person who doesn't already know everything. We come to the Magician, who says you are capable of learning to manipulate all of the various symbols of the suits, by which we mean when the Magician comes up, that you are capable of deepening your knowledge and capability with all of the suits. That is career and ambition. That is emotion and connectivity. That is ideals, ideas, and boundaries, and also self-care and the management of stuff. That's the Magician. Then we come to the High Priestess we talked about in the past. She really says it's very important to make space in your life for the mystical, whatever that is for you. She really suggests that there's a lot in your inner life that you need to make space for. Then we come to the Empress. The Empress is lush and voluptuous and says, eat dessert first, because it's important to make room for the mystical. It's also important to validate the body that you have and the resources that you have. So she doesn't say burn it all up, but she does say make sure that you find ways to enjoy the skin that you're in. Then you come to the Emperor, who is the embodiment of society at its best and worst. The Emperor is 911 that works. It is bridges that stay up. It is everything. The Emperor speaks to all of the sort of infrastructure that makes a society bigger than just a family, tribal family unit work. He also can be dogmatism and fascism and oppression. So, and father issues. So there's the Emperor. Then we come to the Hierophant, a word that I have never seen in any context outside of tarot. And you let me know if you have. A Hierophant. But in some of the old decks, it was the Pope and even the Lady Pope. I guess it would be the High Priestess. But we see the Hierophant. And the Hierophant is essentially, technically, a spiritual leader, but really comes up practically when it's more like time to bend the knee in order to gain the benefit of long-standing and established institutions. So that is getting the certification in your trade. That is going back to college. That can literally be joining a monastery if that's your thing. So the Hierophant is really about being willing to sort of be the supplicant in the quest for information and be willing to be humble. Then it comes from there to the Lovers. As we review, the Lovers are number 6. And in most versions, as I said in the past, sometimes the numbers change depending on people's various esoteric systems. But if you're just here for practical tarot, that part shouldn't bother you. The why. But the Lovers comes up around not only romance, but also around our capacity to be emotionally available to others, our capacity to be as kind to ourselves as we should be with others. The Lovers card basically gives you the homework of like, be a decent person so that you can be a decent person for you as well as the world and others. Can speak to romance, can speak to family relations, all kinds of stuff. And then the Chariot. The Chariot is the card that says, hey, you've got all the power in the world. You just have to decide, are you going to stay or are you going to go? Typically depicts someone in a chariot, literally with 2 horses going in 2 different directions. It's as if everything is there, but the unit is poorly organized. So it asks you to be your own grand marshal and figure out how to get this parade moving. The Strength card comes up. The Strength card is usually number 8. Or I should say sometimes number 8. Often it is a depiction of a hominid and a lion. Sometimes the human is attacking the lion. Sometimes they are wooing rather than assaulting the lion. Perhaps they're, lion and lambing with the lion. But when the Strength card comes up, it says, what kind of strength is required? Is it personal strength? Is it physical strength? Is it strength of personality? Is it strength of means and resources? My deck tends to moralize about the benefits of not needing to use dominance and overpowering. But of course, sometimes you just have to chase a raccoon off with a stick. Then we come to the Hermit card. The Hermit comes up. The Hermit is an interesting reflection of the Hierophant. As the Hierophant says, you can't teach yourself everything. Sometimes you need to go to the places where the cultural and institutional knowledge is kept. The Hermit card says maybe you can teach yourself. Some things you can learn by spending time with yourself or perhaps working with someone one-on-one. The Hermit, and again, it came up a lot for folks during COVID because many of us were sort of, I don't want to say forcibly, but were circumstantially hermited. After that, we come to some more of the virtues. We come to the Justice card. Justice and judgment can be a little confusing, the relationship between them. Justice asks you what is ethical and what is legal, because right may look very different according to which lens you're in. So justice, what kind of justice do you want to be? Then we come to the Hanged Man. We might have talked about the Hanged Man last week, I think. This one is short-term sacrifice for long-term goals. It is eating ramen for 3 years so you can get your degree. It is getting very little sleep and dividing your resources so that you can be a parent or caregiver. It is, immersive study in another country while you try to learn a language. So the Hangman is very much about digging in for the long haul. It also cautions you to not be codependent because, if you can possibly manage, don't do that. Don't use the Hangman. Don't use the highfalutin mission of the Hangman as an excuse to be codependent if you can possibly help it. Then we come to the Death card. Death card means the painful closure of a situation that is already overdue. By the time the Death card comes up, that relationship is past saving, that you want to have your desk packed and be on your way at the door from that job. The Death card really suggests not so much physical death as the transformation of a situation. And we usually experience it as painful, but the Death card is like, no, really, it's going to be better from here because out of this ruin, glorious things can grow. It's the phoenix from the ashes. Then we come to the Temperance card. Temperance encourages us to find a livable compromise when we're dealing with others, to find a livable blend when it comes to making decisions about our own life. And I think I talked last week a lot about my experiences with the Temperance, visualizing the Temperance angel. And then the Devil, everybody's favorite party guy. The Devil is the card of addiction, obsession, compulsion, denial, overwork, oversleep, overdrink, overeat. Anything where we have found a way to take a good and pleasurable thing and turn it fundamentally into a dangerous thing. Dangerous to ourselves, dangerous to others. That's the Devil card. When it comes up, it suggests a situation very painfully out of balance. If it's not painful yet, it shall be as the fundamental imbalance is revealed. And then we come to the Tower. So there we are. That is the summation of 3 weeks of this session that we've been doing. Tower card, radical change of perspective. And that brings us right back around to the star, healing, the moon, unforeseen forces at work, the sun, ultimate card of benediction that says, you done good, everybody can see you, it all worked out. The Judgment card, who would you like to be? What lessons can you learn? Shake a tail feather and rebuild yourself. And the universe says, your cycle, like this cycle, is now complete. Do we have questions from out there? Let me know. I am very jazzed to have managed to made it through all those major arcana. You're the best. Additionally, I guess what I'll be doing next session I do believe we'll still be here next session. Thank you. I will answer that question in a moment. I will be moving through the people cards, also known as the court or face cards. So if you're going to be joining us next week, I know that some of our regulars were unable to join us this time around. We'll be moving through those people cards, who in many ways are the more complex, some of the most complex cards to read in the deck in some ways. So those will be your kings and queens and princes and pages and so forth. So you might want to pull those out in anticipation for next session. So I have a question here from BLC Blondie. What did you use to color your cards? I will even scope back a little bit from that and say the process by which I made my cards, as many of you know, they are block prints. So they were drawn in reverse on blocks and then carved with chisels, which leaves the reverse image. It's sort of like there's that which the surface which remains and the surface which has been cut away, like little ravines. They are inked. Traditionally, they're inked with black ink that is made from bones, from cattle bones, which adds a certain something to it. So they're inked in black and white. They are printed, which means they are now facing the correct way. So a figure that had been carved facing this way, the print will show up facing this way. And then they have to sit for several weeks while the ink cures. And then I actually used fancy Prismacolor markers. They're basically like watercolor markers. There was a time period in my life, I had a Tupperware container and they were like $4 a piece. And I had, 100 of them or something. The contents of my watercolor marker collection, they were more valuable than the pickup truck that I drove at that point in my life. And so it's where I learned to be fastidious about my tools. Because when you're a kid living in a yurt and every magic marker, is $4 or $5. I use my magic markers to make magic. They are, it's a great question. There were Prismacolor markers. They're not like the ones they have now. I actually prefer the old school ones. If you were to open another window and Google up Prismacolor markers, these are the ones that they're very highly pigmented. There's hundreds of colors, and they have like a wide tip on one end and a narrow tip on the other end. Now they've made it like a big fat marker on one end and like a almost like a ballpoint pen, so thin on the other side. Neither of those could have been used for the body of work that I've made. I still have all my old ones from 20 years ago, and I still use them because I've taken good care of them. And they have much more of a sort of intermediate. It's like more like two flavors of Sharpie sort of thickness on either end. I even learned how you can like resuscitate them. If they dried out, you could actually inject them with isopropyl alcohol and re-liquefy them. And very in keeping with the Creating with Crew ink conversation that we had earlier today. Thank you very much. You love the color in my cards. They are gorgeous. Thanks. That is literally because of Prismacolor markers. You will notice, I wonder if I can find an example of it here. Sort of, you can see, well, maybe that's not the best example. Like you can see here in this unicorn, one of the things I did in order to I'm certainly not going for a 3-dimensional quality, but in order to add some lushness to them, what I learned to do color-wise was to group tones together. So, here is a sand colored Prismacolor marker and a bronze and a rose beige and an adobe. And like in my brain, they became arrayed in spectrums of color because I could layer them in order to make, like, if you can sort of see the color that defines the contours and the unicorn's flanks there on the other side there. Like that is the application of many different layers of similarly toned, but different intensities. What's another example? You can sort of see in the sun there or in the flag. It's not just green. It is green and chartreuse and lemon yellow, all layered in various ways. And sometimes you could really get them to blend and make a beautiful sort of ombre. And sometimes not so much. This is how I learned things. So I hope that's useful. I hate to tell people sometimes that they're magic markers because it sounds so basically crafty. But I have to say, again, I grew up working with sign paint, which is was lead-based enamel and so forth. that was like the medium of choice. That and flour in my house, because my mother was a master pie maker as well as a master sign painter. So I grew up with those as like the primary mediums in which things around me got expressed visually. And so, markers seemed so banal, but it was the best way for me to be able to work in these incredibly small spaces. Again, it's like here, if you look into the, look into the foliage here of these cattails, like those are very little, tiny, tiny areas to fill color wise. And I wasn't able to apply watercolor on a brush with the same precision that I could. Basically, a Prismacolor marker is already watercolors, but in an alcohol medium on a super fine point. So that allowed me to get really, really fine detail. So thanks. That's a lovely question. Almost nobody ever asks me that. What I was working on today in just your basic acrylic, I'm making some signage for my partner who's going off to do a festival soon. And this is me trying to remember my, sign painter training, but with acrylics, which is, again, like secretly acrylic paint to me feels like little kid craft paint. But it's 95 degrees, and I definitely don't want to stand outside with turpentine in this weather to do it old school and gangsta when I could be here in the air conditioning with y'all doing it with acrylic. So a little bit about materials today and a little bit about the artistic process. I'm working on this other project that I spoke up about today on creating with the crew during our show at, I don't know, whatever that was, 12:30. Those pieces of art, which are going to be individual illustrations of the monsters of Yuletide, Krampus, Perchta, the big terrifying Icelandic cat, the Yule lads, all kinds of sort of fascinating monsters from, creatures from around the crypto biology of Christmas. Those will be scratchboard, which is far less complicated and in its own way even less forgiving than block printing. If you're familiar with it, it's a thin sheet of, we'll say wood. I honestly have no idea. That is like got a shiny white surface, and that has been laid over with a matte black surface. And you can scratch that matte black surface away, revealing the white underneath. So you can see how that would create a similar contrast to this. But there, like I said, it's even in a way less forgiving than block prints. So it's definitely faster, which is great because I want to try to have these Advent calendars made in time for Advent, which gives me 3 months to do the art and 3 months to do the production. But it's a whole different process. And those I have learned, it's very difficult for me to color those ones in because the art style, the medium lends itself so much to fine grained black and white areas rather than big chunks of black and white contrast. So it's almost more wood grainy. It's really, if I color in those lines, I find that the whole thing just gets really dark. So what else do we have here for comments? I don't blame you. Thank you. We're going to make something like that in elementary school. Yes, absolutely. That's a great way to get kids started on the idea of scratchboard. So I think what BLC Blondie's talking about is you let the kids color a surface in any wild, crazy pattern with crayons, and then they cover that with black. And with any tool, I mean, you could do it with the back end of a paintbrush. You could do it with this end or this end. You can just scratch away the top layer, and it will reveal the color underneath. So if your kids get good at that, or get jazzed about it, then ultimately you can actually, I would advocate for doing it the folky hands-on DIY way. But if they get down with that and you have a budget for that, you can buy colored black sheets that have the color laid underneath already to get sort of the prefab version of what you're making. And of course, they will get a more precise result. So if you have some kids who are just here to scritch, and make finger painting, don't worry about it. But if you have some kids who are more precision minded, you might point them towards those prefab sheets because they can get something that is much more like the real scratchboard experience. And it's still, low consequence sheets of paper. And they do have color underneath because of course scratchboard is just black with a white underlayer. these sheets, you can get black ones that are red underneath, or black ones that are red and green and yellow striped, or pride themed, or whatever. So it does offer a slightly different experience, more akin to what you're already doing with the kids, just on a slightly higher budget. So I am willing to read a set of cards tonight for folks if you want. As I said at the outset, I am quite concerned about my birds because it's like 95 degrees here, and I think I might actually set up an extension cord and a box fan out there in the chicken coop before too long, before too late. So if you would like your cards read, let me know. Otherwise, I'm happy to do them for you next week. I'll just pause for a moment while folks decide. I love to read cards for you. I just worry. What else can I tell you? Yeah, next week we're going to be doing we'll do the people cards, face cards, and I invite you. You know, that may be I think that will bring us to the end of the deck if we get through all 16 cards next week, assuming it'll be a longer session. That may bring us to the close of this sequence for a while, and great. That would bring us to the close of this. I'll probably go over and do some stuff for my people on the Facebook for a bit. But I will try to remember to go back and list all these sessions I have done. They're not necessarily automatically going to YouTube. I have to remember to go back and do that. It's part of the whole arrangement with Twitch. So I will try to go back there and do that. So if anybody wants to be able to review any of this material that you might have missed, I can make that available for you. Oh, speaking of which, thanks to Nat 21 Adventures for letting me be here in the Nat 21 space, Nat 21 verse with y'all good people. I'm just getting these cards mixed up. All right. Let me pull some cards for you, friend. Just going to pull 3. Let me know if there's something specific that we're going for, or is this just kind of a, what do I need to know? Just general reading. Y'all are probably familiar, but I generally feel over the cards, trying to get a little resonance. Okay. I just feel it as a little, it's like a shiver in my hand, but warm, kind of like carbonation. Let's see what the cards have to say. Oh my. Wow, friend. Wow. So your general casual reading is 3 of the Major Arcana cards. Interestingly, they're all in the second half. So it's interesting when you're doing a reading, if you're not numbers inclined, if you are a dysmathic or anything like that, you don't have to get involved in the magic of numbers. You can just go, wow, that's a lot of big numbers or a lot of small numbers. One suggests something that is sort of already well in swing. One suggests something that's in the nascent or beginning stages. These are, you've got a 12, a 13, and a 17. So that puts everything pretty well into the second half of the majors. You could look at that as a way to think that you are in mid-stride with whatever these cards are here to explain. And you got Death, the Hanged Man, and the Star. So there's a lot going on there. The Death card, of course, as we've talked about, speaks to the close of a situation. It is something that, whether you know it or not, it's a good time to walk away from something. If you don't walk away from it, you'll be pushed away from it circumstantially because something is in a state of closure. So here's the Death card for anybody who hasn't seen it in the past. You see the figures in the front, sort of in various stages of denial, grief, anger, sadness, etc. There is the funeral pyre, and there is the good things that come out of our radical transformation. So the death card says things for you, in a general sense, would like to shift in a big way. Let me see the Hanged Man. We talked about the Hanged Man. The Hanged Man is really almost a card of vision quest. It says, what is worth doing for you? What is worth digging in and making some hard choices, some sacrifices, some undertaking adventure for? So the Hanged Man is asking you to make some big decisions, big moves. And the third card, right here in the middle, is number 17, the Star. This is the card that says big healing, big insight, big inspiration, revelation, change. Those waters are the waters of healing. It's like, by all means, get a spa day and take some time to be with the thoughts and feelings that this situation is bringing up. So while I have no idea for you, my friend, what is going on, those all look like it is like you are standing in the beginning of an opportunity for something that is going to be meaningful and profound and transformative, not only for yourself, but also for other people. But there's also going to be some letting go of some painful things, perhaps, as part of that process. Unless you're just so done that you're like, yeah, no kidding, I'm already walking away from the burning building behind me. So, yeah, I'm going to hold those up so you can see all three of them in one go. And if you have this deck at home, or any deck, I encourage you to lay them out on yours as well, so that you can just sit with them. Like, put them where you can see them while you drink your coffee, or post them up above your screen so that you can get a chance to look at them. Notice how each one is so sort of strident and bold and individual, like pastel or flamey or nighttime or daytime. Like, they all have a lot going on. So yeah, put them where you can see them and spend some time with them and see if you can bring some further insight into them. And with that, my friends, I know I'm a few minutes early of my usual closing time, but I'm going to go find some extension cords and see what I can do to take care of my birds in this swelter fest. So let me get everything ready to go. If I remember how to do that. I am Madame Onça, and it has been my pleasure to spend this time with you. Again, next week we will do the people cards. So get all those cards out. I look forward to spending that time with y'all then. And meanwhile, blessed be.